Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive. Today we're going to be talking about Hollywood. Specifically, is Hollywood in crisis? We've got a bunch of YouTube videos here from channels like Nerdrotic and Disparu, and they're all kind of saying the same thing. Things aren't looking so good.
Yeah, it's interesting how much this topic is being talked about. Everyone seems to have an opinion, and a lot of people are getting pretty worried. So let's dive in and see what's going on.
Right, sounds good to me.
Yeah.
Let's start with something that I saw pop up in a few of these videos. This whole woke ideology thing. Some of these commentators are saying that Hollywood's pushing it way too far, and it's alienating their audience.
Yeah, there are a couple of specific examples that keep coming up. One is the casting of Halle Bailey as Ariel in The Little Mermaid. That definitely caused some controversy online.
Right.
And then there's the Secret Invasion series on Disney+. A lot of viewers felt like the show focused so much on identity politics that the villain's motivations got kind of lost.
Interesting. So is this debate just a cultural difference thing, or is there a financial side to it too?
Well, a lot of these commentators are saying that it's actually hurting Hollywood financially. They're pointing to box office flops and streaming services losing money, and they're directly connecting those things to woke content. They're saying that Hollywood is so focused on pushing these messages that they're forgetting to tell good stories that people actually want to watch.
That's a good point. And it's not just about ideology, right? The rise of streaming platforms like Netflix has totally changed the game for how Hollywood does business.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Studios are spending a ton of money on productions, but they don't really seem to know how many people are actually watching. I mean, it's like a black box when it comes to audience data.
Yeah.
And some people are arguing that streaming contracts are actually hurting writers and actors because they offer less financial security. They don't get as many residuals.
Right. Makes you wonder, is this just a temporary thing, or are there some bigger problems going on here?
Yeah. It's hard to say for sure.
The Nerdrotic channel had an interesting point about how South Korea's entertainment industry is super efficient right now. They're putting out hit after hit.
Oh, yeah. I've heard that too. They're doing some really interesting stuff over there.
Yeah. So could they actually capitalize on Hollywood's struggles?
Well, they've definitely got the momentum. Their focus on strong storytelling and streamlined production has gotten them a lot of international attention, so it's definitely possible.
It'll be interesting to see what happens there. Okay, let's get back to this debate about storytelling in Hollywood. A lot of these YouTubers seem to think that Hollywood has lost its focus on telling good stories. They're saying that instead of compelling plots and relatable characters, it feels like they're just pushing an agenda.
Yeah, and that disconnect is making people feel like they're being preached to all the time. The values and the stories just don't resonate with them.
Yeah. It makes me think of She-Hulk and that Robin Hood movie that came out a while back.
Yeah.
They both got a lot of negative feedback for having weak plots and characters that were hard to relate to and storylines that just felt really predictable. And actually, one commentator said that the writing for She-Hulk felt like someone just threw a bunch of random ideas on sticky notes and called it a script.
Ouch. Yeah, I mean, the point they're making is that Hollywood is so focused on checking boxes for representation that they're forgetting how to tell a good story.
And of course, we have to talk about Bob Iger, the Disney CEO. He's been getting a lot of heat for decisions he made during his time running the company. The huge push into streaming, the way they handled that Don't Say Gay Bill controversy, the constant stream of sequels and reboots. It's a long list.
Yeah, some people are even saying that his return as CEO is more about protecting his own legacy than actually trying to help the company. They point to his big salary, even though Disney's been struggling, as evidence.
But Iger's defending his choices. He says he was the one who successfully launched the streaming business and that he's focused on creating high-quality content. And he even blames his predecessor, Bob Chapek, for some of the problems, specifically overspending on streaming content.
Yeah, I mean, it is interesting because even Iger has admitted to making some mistakes. He said that he focused too much on quantity over quality, especially when it comes to the Marvel stuff. So the question is, are these genuine acknowledgments, or is he just trying to shift the blame?
Yeah, good question. And then there was that crazy moment between Iger and Elon Musk. Musk basically told Iger to go expletive himself after Iger made some comments about what he considers to be right and wrong.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I remember that.
Apparently, Musk cares more about what people do than what they say when it comes to morality.
Yeah, that whole thing really shows you the tension that's building between Hollywood and people who feel like Hollywood doesn't represent their values anymore. And this isn't just a Disney thing either. A lot of studios are being criticized for their perceived political leanings.
Yeah, for sure. And on top of all that, there's the financial side of things. Warner Brothers might be facing bankruptcy. Paramount Global's debt has been downgraded. And Paramount Plus is even taking some of its most popular kids' content off its streaming platform. And some people are saying that this is connected to the controversies surrounding that Nickelodeon documentary that came out.
Yeah, it's hard to say for sure what the cause and effect is there.
Right.
But it is important to remember that all of this is happening at a time when the entire entertainment industry is going through massive changes.
Right.
The rise of streaming and changing audience habits are shaking things up. And then you add the pressure of the writers and actors strikes, and it's no wonder that the future of Hollywood seems uncertain.
Yeah, those strikes are definitely not helping.
Yeah.
The writers were pushing for better pay, especially for streaming projects, but the deal they ended up getting is being seen by a lot of people as only benefiting a small group.
Right.
And now the actors are on strike demanding even more, so we're going to see even more delays and disruptions in the industry.
It's kind of a strange situation because the unions are making these demands at the same time that the market is shrinking. With fewer productions and smaller budgets, there's just less money to go around. It makes you wonder if the strikes are actually hurting the very people they're supposed to be helping.
Yeah, it's a tough spot to be in. And it's not just about money either. There's the sense that Hollywood has lost its creative edge. Like one commentator even compared the industry to a bug planet, like full of old, decaying ideas and recycled content.
Oh, a bug planet.
Yeah, they're saying that this obsession with sequels and reboots and trying to please every demographic has just killed originality.
Yeah, I mean, it does make you think about how creative industries work. When they get too successful and comfortable, they can forget what made them successful in the first place. And if they're not willing to change and adapt, they risk becoming irrelevant.
Right. And it seems like some companies outside of the traditional Hollywood system are noticing this. Like Angel Studios, the company that made The Sound of Freedom, they're gaining traction by catering to a different audience with a different set of values. They're basically challenging Hollywood's dominance by making content that appeals to people who feel like Hollywood has forgotten about them.
It's really interesting to see these alternative studios popping up. It's a sign that the entertainment world is becoming more fragmented. Like audiences are more diverse in their tastes and values, and they're looking for content that reflects that.
So it all comes back to that big question. What's the future of Hollywood? Can they change with the times, or are they just going to keep doing what they've always done?
That's a tough one to answer. There are a lot of factors at play, and it's a really complicated situation. Some people think this is the end of Hollywood as we know it, while others believe that this is a chance for them to reinvent themselves.
So can Hollywood actually change and adapt enough to survive? Like, are they even willing to, take a hard look at themselves and how they do things?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? It's not easy for a system as big as Hollywood to just, change direction overnight. I mean, they've been doing things a certain way for so long.
Yeah. One commentator even said it's like trying to turn a giant ship around. Like, it takes time and a lot of effort. They were saying that Hollywood is so stuck in its ways that it might be too late for them to, react to all of these challenges.
It's a good analogy. But it does raise another big question. If Hollywood can't adapt, who's going to step in to fill that space?
Right. We were talking earlier about Angel Studios and how they're finding success with faith-based content and stuff like that.
Yeah, appealing to an audience that they feel like Hollywood is ignoring.
Exactly.
Right. And they're not the only ones either. There are tons of independent filmmakers and production companies that are figuring out how to do things outside of the traditional Hollywood system.
It really feels like we're seeing a major shift toward independent and alternative content creation. Technology is giving creators more power to bypass the old gatekeepers and just go directly to a global audience.
Right. And that could lead to a way more diverse and interesting entertainment landscape, more voices, more stories, more options for everyone.
So what does all of this mean for the average person who just wants to watch something good?
I mean, it means more choices, right? You have all of these different voices and stories to choose from, and you have a better chance of finding something that actually aligns with your values and your interests.
I guess that's the exciting part.
Yeah.
But it also means that we have to be more careful about what we watch, right? It can be really overwhelming to figure out what's worth your time with so much content out there.
Exactly. That's why it's so important to be a critical thinker. We have to be more discerning about the content that we consume, think about the messages that we're being given, and support the creators who are making the kind of content that we actually believe in.
That's a great point. Honestly, I think it's a really exciting time to be a viewer. We're seeing this massive change in how entertainment is made and consumed, and who knows what the future holds.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting, that's for sure. One thing's for sure, though, the old ways are being challenged, and that can only be a good thing in the long run.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, so we've talked about the big picture, but let's get into some of the specific challenges that Hollywood is facing right now. I think one of the biggest ones is the decline of the movie theater experience.
Oh, yeah, for sure. With streaming becoming so popular, fewer and fewer people are going to theaters these days.
Right.
It's been brutal for theater chains, and a lot of them have had to close down.
Yeah. It's sad to see. And even for the movies that do make it to theaters, they have to compete with how easy and cheap it is to just stream something at home.
It's true. It's forcing studios to rethink how they release their movies. Some are trying shorter theatrical runs, and some are just skipping theaters altogether and going straight to streaming.
But there's something special about seeing a movie in a theater, isn't there? Like that shared experience with a big audience being immersed in the sound and the visuals.
Absolutely. A lot of industry experts believe that movie theaters will always have a place, even with streaming being so big. But they have to adapt. Like, they have to offer something that you can't get at home.
Right, like maybe better food, more comfortable seats, special events and screenings, things like that.
Exactly. They need to become destinations, like places where you go not just to watch a movie, but to have an experience.
Another big challenge that keeps coming up is the rising cost of making movies and TV shows.
Yeah, with the demand for more and more content, especially for streaming, the costs just keep going up and up.
Seems like every movie needs to have crazy special effects and A-list actors, these elaborate sets.
Yeah, it all adds up really quickly, and that pressure to keep costs down can lead to cutting corners and sacrificing quality.
Which can be a slippery slope.
Definitely. It can really hurt your reputation in the long run.
Yeah.
That's why finding that balance between cost and quality is so important.
Yeah. Like maybe studios need to be more careful about what projects they decide to make.
Right.
Maybe negotiate better deals with actors and directors, explore new ways to make content that are more efficient.
Exactly. That's where the opportunity is in all of this. It's a chance to be creative, to try new things, to break away from the old ways of doing things.
Yeah. It's exciting to think about.
Absolutely. It's a chance for Hollywood to reinvent itself. That's why this is such a fascinating time to be watching the entertainment industry. Like, we're seeing all of these massive changes happening, and it's impossible to know what the future holds.
It's going to be a wild ride, that's for sure. Okay, let's talk about some of the specific criticisms that people are making about the content that Hollywood is putting out. One that comes up a lot is that it's become too formulaic and predictable. Like the same old tropes, the same characters, the same storylines.
Yeah, it feels like they're just rehashing the same old stuff over and over again. And that lack of originality is definitely turning some people off. Like, audiences are hungry for something fresh and exciting, something that breaks the mold.
That's probably one of the reasons why independent and international films are becoming more popular. They're seen as being more authentic and less bound by those typical Hollywood formulas.
Yeah, I think that's a big part of it. And it's a challenge that Hollywood needs to address if they want to stay relevant. Like, they need to find ways to bring more creativity and originality back into their films and shows.
Maybe that means taking more risks, supporting new voices, being willing to experiment with different genres and storytelling approaches.
Exactly. Another common criticism is that Hollywood has become too preachy, too moralistic.
Yeah, it feels like every movie has to have a message.
Right. And it's usually delivered in a way that feels really heavy-handed.
Yeah, you can totally feel it. And that kind of storytelling can be alienating. Like, people don't want to feel like they're being lectured to.
No, they want to be entertained. And honestly, it can actually undermine the power of the story. When you're so focused on pushing an agenda, you can lose sight of what makes a story truly connect with people.
Right. That emotional connection.
Exactly. That's what great storytelling is all about.
That's something Hollywood needs to remember.
They need to trust their audience and let the stories speak for themselves.
Speaking of messages, let's talk about some specific examples of movies that have been criticized for being overly political. The one that comes to mind is the recent Star Wars movie.
Yeah, a lot of fans felt like the storytelling in those movies was sacrificed in order to push a certain agenda, and it caused a pretty big backlash.
Yeah, they felt like their favorite franchise had been hijacked.
Right. And we've seen similar criticisms of other big franchises like Marvel and DC Comics. It's a tough balance to strike because if you alienate your core audience, you risk damaging your brand.
Right. At the end of the day, Hollywood is in the business of entertainment, which means appealing to a wide range of viewers.
Exactly. You have to find a way to make something that everyone can enjoy. Okay, let's talk about diversity and representation in Hollywood.
Yeah.
It's a topic that comes up a lot, and it's a tricky one to navigate.
Yeah, it is.
There's this push for more diversity, both in front of and behind the camera, but there's also this concern that it can sometimes feel like tokenism, like forced representation.
Yeah, I can see that. Like, true diversity is about more than just checking boxes.
It's about creating opportunities for underrepresented voices to tell their stories and building a more inclusive and equitable industry.
Right, and that's something that Hollywood is still working toward.
Yeah, there's been progress, but there's still a long way to go. Okay, so we've talked about a lot of the challenges that Hollywood is facing, but what about the future? What can we expect to see?
It's hard to say for sure.
I mean, it's impossible to predict the future, but there are some trends that suggest the industry is at a crossroads. The rise of streaming, the decline of movie theaters, the increasing cost of production, these conversations about diversity and representation, it's all forcing Hollywood to change.
Yeah, it feels like the studios that are willing to embrace that change and adapt are the ones that are going to survive.
The ones that are willing to take risks, to support new and different voices, and to create content that's both entertaining and thought-provoking.
Those are the studios that are going to shape the future of entertainment.
It's not just about the big studios, though, right? Like,
Right.
we're seeing more and more individual creators finding ways to connect with audiences on their own,
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
using platforms like YouTube and TikTok and Patreon and stuff like that.
Yeah, the rise of the creator economy is huge. It's like
Yeah.
entertainment is being democratized. Anyone with a story to tell and a camera can build an audience.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. And it's empowering, too. Like, we're not just waiting around for a few big studios to decide what we get to watch.
Exactly. It's a much more dynamic landscape, and it's only going to get more interesting from here. So what can we as viewers do to support the kind of content that we want to see more of?
I mean, it's pretty simple. Put your money where your mouth is. Support the creators who are making stuff that you like and that aligns with your values. Tell your friends about it. Share it on social media.
And don't be afraid to speak up about content that you don't like either. Give constructive feedback, have discussions. Like, the future of entertainment is in our hands.
Yeah, we have the power to shape what gets made by choosing what we watch and who we support. So let's be mindful of our choices and use that power to create a more diverse, inclusive, and entertaining world.
Before we wrap up, I wanted to share one more thought. One of the commentators that we were looking at asked this really interesting question. If Hollywood is the ashes of civilization, what does that say about the state of our society?
That is a heavy one.
Yeah, it really made me think.
It gets at the heart of how connected entertainment and culture really are.
Right.
Entertainment is a reflection of our values, our fears, our hopes, all of it.
So if what's coming out of Hollywood is so dark and cynical and divided, what does that tell us about ourselves?
It's a question worth thinking about for sure, because the future of entertainment is tied to the future of our society as a whole.
It's a good reminder to be mindful of the stories that we're telling and the messages that we're sending. Like, we have a responsibility to use our influence to create a better world, both on screen and off.
I agree. Well, it looks like we've reached the end of our deep dive into the world of Hollywood. We've talked about the woke debate, the rise of streaming, the criticisms of modern storytelling, and what the future might hold.
It's a really complicated issue with a lot of moving parts, and I'm sure it's something that we'll be revisiting in future deep dives.
In the meantime, we encourage you to keep thinking about these things, talk about them with your friends, check out the sources that we mentioned, and form your own opinions.
And be an active viewer. Make conscious choices about what you watch and who you support.
Because ultimately, the future of entertainment is in your hands.
Thanks for joining us for another deep dive. We'll catch you next time.
Until then, keep learning, keep exploring, and keep asking questions.